Next item on the agenda, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, next item, Legislative Bill 143, introduced by Senator Conrad. It's a bill for an act relating to time, amends sections 49-1301, 1302, and 81-1323, 32-908, 81-1328, provides a year-round daylight savings time as prescribed, harmonized provisions, repeals original section. When the legislature left the bill, pending was an amendment from Senator Erdman to amend LB 143 to adopt Mountain and Central Standard as Nebraska's year-round time.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Senator Conrad, would you like to refresh on LB 143?
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. Friends, LB 143 is a measure that, again, I picked up from then Senator Tom Briese after he was appointed state treasurer. Senator Briese has worked on this issue for many years during his time in the legislature, and I was an enthusiastic supporter thereof during the interim period for my service when I was outside of the legislature, and then quickly became a proud co-sponsor of this measure when I rejoined this august body. LB 143 was advanced from our committee. It has very strong support, I think, in each of our districts and amongst colleagues on the floor. And what LB 143 does, colleagues, is it puts into place a framework for a gradual decision to be made to ensure that we can stop changing our clocks twice a year. So under existing federal law, the proposal in LB 143 would allow us to select permanent daylight savings time, stop making the change twice a year.
That's your time on the refresh, Senator.
I didn't think it was time limited.
The refresh was a 2-minute refresh, Senator.
Okay, I'll hit my light and I'll continue then. Thank you.
Senator Erdman, you are recognized to speak.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate that. Senator Conrad, sorry you got cut off there. We'll give you a chance again, I think. So over the last 3 or 4 days, I have received several emails, and some are in support of daylight savings times permanent. Some are very much in support of standard time. I received a document that I think is important that I was to have it to distribute. I'm sorry I didn't get that to you, but all of the opposition that I've received is from people who like golfing late at night or late afternoon or evening activities. They don't take into consideration the ramifications to people's health. And so it's quite obvious that the study proves and has proven that permanent daylight savings time is the worst option that we could choose. It also shows that changing the clock twice a year is detrimental to your health. And so the situation is this: either we stay on one time or the other, and if you're going to choose, it has to be standard time, which is the best for your health and well-being. There is a chart, and I was hoping to have that presented to you, but let me just explain what it is. And it shows the state of Nebraska, and across the state, it shows that if we went to standard time year-round, there would be the sun would come up, the latest it would come up would be 8:10. If we go to daylight savings time, it's 9:10. It also shows that the center part of the state would have 140 days. They'd have 140 days when the sun comes up after 8 o'clock. The eastern part of the state would have 120 days when the sun came up after 8 o'clock. That is a detriment to young people going to school, and also for those people who have to do outside things in the morning. And it's quite obvious our biological clocks work best. And I think the reason they work best on standard time is that's what God created. So when God created man, he figured out what's the best time to have man live by, and their biological clock is standard time. So daylight savings time ends up causing more depression, more sleep deprivation, and other issues that affect one's well-being. And it's kind of amazing, back in 1974, a Nebraska senator introduced a Congress against permanent daylight savings time. So this is an issue we've been talking about for 40, 50 years. So if you're going to make a decision that you don't like to change your clock, standard time is the choice. And some say, okay, the other states have adopted daylight savings time when Congress approves it. South Dakota just rejected that notion recently. The only states that have actually adopted daylight savings time is Wyoming and Colorado. And I'll just give you this information because it's important. Wyoming is now going to rescind their vote to go like daylight savings time permanently. So when people tell you in their email they send that we'll be different than the other states, that's not exactly the case. But whatever works for their argument is what they use. And so I have several articles that show young people being injured in the morning when it's dark going to school because the bus driver can't see them or other motorists can't see them either because of the darkness. And so as we begin to think about what is best for society, what will solve the issue that we always hear from people about daylight savings time and changing the clock, this is the answer. This is the one.
1 minute.
Thank you. So what I suggest is let's advance this to select. Give me an opportunity to distribute this information so you can read it for yourself. And let's make a decision based on facts and not on what someone wants to do for their leisure time. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Erdman. Senator Conrad, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. Thank you to Senator Erdman for his comments this morning in regards to this measure. I said it last week when we had this measure up and have said the same off the mic and to constituents that I want to be very transparent in regards to my position. I do not see Senator Erdman's amendment as a hostile amendment. My primary goal in moving this forward is that we stop changing our clocks twice a year, which I think is a goal that many of us support and many of our constituents support and many Americans support, as evidenced by public opinion poll. Then the question becomes, if we agree on that goal, how do we do it? LB 143 recognizes a gradual process under federal law wherein states can select to stay on permanent daylight saving time, or they can immediately decide to move to standard time, as our neighboring, as Arizona and Hawaii do, other states in this regard. If we choose the gradual approach allowed under federal law, and as evidenced in LB 143 as introduced in advance, it would require that 3 adjacent states to us make this election as well, and Senator Erdman's exactly right. Colorado and Wyoming have already done so. Perhaps there may be additional movement in those states as we are in deliberations ourselves, but that is the current legal landscape. And then it would also require federal approval. So it is a more regional approach. It is contingent upon actions in our sister states, our adjacent states, and it is contingent upon federal approval. So to be very clear, I think we're all aware of the partisan dysfunction that has crippled our nation's capital, and I am deeply concerned about waiting around to make the change. That's why I like the approach Senator Erdman has brought forward as an alternative idea to stop moving our clocks twice a year, which I think definitely has negative impacts for health, safety, conservation, parenting, energy, economic, and otherwise. So that being said, I'm not sure 100% if Senator Erdman is going to withdraw this at this measure, so at this stage of debate so that we can move forward and keep working on it, or if he wanted to take a vote on FA 207 at this stage of the debate. But I will enjoy working with him and others in the process, regardless of his decision on this amendment today. Additionally, colleagues, I'm going to probably run out of time, but I have two additional pieces that I want to make sure to be clear about. Senator Dorn asked me in initial debate, and others have asked off the mic, what's the significance of changing the dates as evidenced on the committee statement? And I may have muddied the water here in the first go around. We are simply updating outdated dates that are in our statute books. There would be no change to our existing seamless practice wherein we all states that recognize this time change, make our time change simultaneously twice a year. So in regards to that component, there is no change in practice. It is simply about adjusting the dates to mirror federal law that are outdated in regards to our statute book. So I wanted to be clear about that point. Finally, I know that each of you, thank you, Mr. President, have received legitimate and important concerns from stakeholders in the golf industry and perhaps even the broadcasting industry that do bring forward important considerations in our deliberations. Those were subject to the public hearing process, and those leaders worked very closely with the government committee to advance the measure. I think that they are very concerned about making Nebraska, quote unquote, an outlier or an island if we were to elect to adopt Senator Erdman's amendment, because they would see it as potential impact on broadcasting services and recreation services that Nebraskans may not be thinking of as we would implement this change. So I will make sure to give a fuller and more complete voice to some of those concerns so everybody is aware of them. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Conrad. Senator Erdman, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, it's got kind of ironic when we mention that we don't want to be an outlier. We're already that way. We're the only state with a unicameral. So those arguments don't hold a lot of water. But as I said, use whatever argument you can when people don't agree with you. So the American Academy of Sleep Medicine has stated the following: end the switch and support permanent standard time. Every year we make a switch between standard time and daylight savings time when we fall back in November and we spring forward in March. This annual switch is quite simply not good for our health. The data clearly shows that the abrupt change to standard time and daylight savings time in March is associated with significant public health and safety risks, including increased risk of adverse cardiovascular events, mood disorders, and motor vehicle accidents and crashes. But we don't want to listen to the medical experts. We want to listen to the media or the golfers or whoever else is going to be infringed upon about changing the time. I think we should be concerned about the health of our citizens. It goes on to say it is critical that we enact legislation to get rid of the switch between standard and daylight savings time. The other issue that we need to consider is we could switch to standard time at any time and make it permanent without approval from Congress. But we will need, and other states will need, approval from Congress to make that switch. Congress had daylight savings time enacted back in 1973 as standard, as year-round daylight savings time, and repealed it in 1974. So if you think at any time in the near future that Congress is going to get you approval to go to daylight savings time, I think you are mistaken. It says, however, permanent daylight saving time is not the answer. Instead, we should move to permanent standard time. Current evidence supports the adoption of year-round standard time, which aligns best with the human biologically and provides distinct benefits for public health and safety. This position is shared by more than 20 medical, scientific, and civic organizations, including the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, American Academy of Neurology, American College of Chest Physicians, American College of Occupational and Environmental Medicine, National PTA, National Safety Council, Society for Research of Biological Rhythms, and the World Sleep Society. And it goes on to talk about other associations that are opposed to daylight savings time. And so I ask you today, give us a green vote on FA 27 to get it to select so that you yourself can review those things that I just described to you and do the research yourself to figure out that what we're doing is better for the well-being of our citizens. So we are so concerned about having it be light after we get off work. If that's the case, open your business or go to work at 7 and get off at 4. But what we're doing now is dangerous to our health by changing the clock twice a year. So what I'm asking is, let's fix it once and for all on something we can do today and not have to wait for years and years and years of Congress to make a decision. It's very simple. Do you want to make it more healthy for the citizens that we represent or not? If you do, then you need to vote for FA 207. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Erdman.